Michael Cohen shook the nation with his testimony against Donald Trump before Congress. Roughly 16 million people watched that history unfolding live, tens of millions more watching the highlights later. And right now we turn to a beat exclusive with an insider who was behind him in that hearing and was literally sitting there the whole time. Anyone who watched the hearings can recall how Cohen was flanked throughout the hearing by, first, a famous Washington attorney right there, Lanny Davis. He's represented the Clintons and often found himself the subject of questions from Republicans on the committee.
Who is paying Lanny Davis?
At the present moment, no one.
So he's doing all this work for nothing?
Yes, sir.
How did Lanny Davis come to represent you? Did he approach you or did you approach him? Did you want to testify before Congress or did he urge you to testify here? I find the connecting of the dots here with Mr. Davis and you and, frankly, the chairman and perhaps others to be rather stunning that there is an agenda.
Those congressmen clearly concerned about Cohen's role, Lanny Davis's role in masterminding what looked like a devastating case against Trump. And they may have missed the other lawyer for Cohen who, just like Davis, shepherded Cohen through all his hearings last week. Veteran lawyer and former U.S. Attorney Michael Monaco, right there. He has become a celebrated criminal defense attorney after a stint as a federal prosecutor. And while Davis drew public fire, Monaco is advising Cohen on his testimony, on what he can and can't say in public. He literally had a fellow front row seat and backstage access to the hearings that riveted the nation. Monaco is actually headed back to Washington this week, shepherding Cohen through his remaining confidential testimony to the House. With me now is former U.S. Attorney Michael Monaco. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Nice being here.
When you look at what came through in that hearing, what was most important in your preparation and your strategy, and what did Michael Cohen get across?
Well, I think the most important thing is for Michael to tell his story, to tell what happened, and to tell the American people the truth about the President of the United States. And I think that did come across.
What do you think was the most damning legally?
Well, I assume the checks would be the most damning legally. The fact that the President of the United States wrote a check as president to Michael Cohen that was part of a scheme to violate campaign finance violations and to violate the rights of the this was a scheme to, in part, to defeat the election. I mean, it was intended, as you well know, it was right after the Billy Bush tape, and the last thing that Mr. Trump wanted, it appears, was to have 2 other episodes of him being involved with a porn star or a Playboy model, and they wanted to avoid that at all costs. So they paid $130,000 to Stormy Daniels through her lawyer. And the first check, by the way, which was referenced in Mr. Cohen's testimony, was a $70,000 check, which I have with me today. A copy of it I have with me today. A $70,000 check written on the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust, which is also an interesting sidelight, that the check was written on a revocable trust that was theoretically begun so that the president would have some separation between his life as a politician and his life as a civil servant.
Was that provided into evidence at the hearing?
No, we didn't have it at the time.
So
we
walk
have it
us
today.
through, hold it up and walk us through what this means.
Sure. It means that when Michael Cohen went to see the president for the first time in the White House in February of 2017, and the president, as you may recall, his testimony that they looked at all the lovely art, and the president was proud of the whole scene, and it was very awesome, as Mr. Cohen said. The president said to Michael at that time, "You will be getting the 2 checks soon." The 2 checks, meaning the 2 $35,000 checks, because as you may recall, Alan, the president's Weisselberg said that instead of paying the entire $420,000 up in one lump sum, he wanted to pay it over the course of a year, $35,000 even each year, each month rather. And so this check, the $70,000 check, which is signed, according to my client, it's signed by Alan Weisselberg and Donald Trump Jr., that this check was the first check, and it's the check that the president himself said to my client when he visited him in the White House, said that that check would be forthcoming soon. And sure enough, it was on Valentine's Day, 2017.
So your view is that really helps further demolish the denial that Trump was somehow post facto reimbursing something he didn't authorize?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Let me play one of the tantalizing parts of this hearing. You're a former federal prosecutor yourself. Here was some of the discussion of the probe in New York. Take a look.
When was the last communication with President Trump or someone acting on his behalf?
This topic is actually something that's being investigated right now by the Southern District of New York.
Is there any other wrongdoing or illegal act that you are aware of regarding Donald Trump that we haven't yet discussed today?
Yes, and again, those are part of the investigation that's currently being looked at by the Southern District of New York.
Is Michael Cohen then continuing to provide information about that to the Southern District, or do they have everything they need from your client?
Michael Cohen continues to assist law enforcement both in the Southern District and elsewhere.
And do you think everything he's done up to this point increases the likelihood that his prison sentence could be reduced?
That's hard to say. Certainly, it completely and totally depends upon the Southern District of New York, and if they find that he has helped them to a substantial amount, then they may help in getting a Rule 35. Otherwise,
Rule 35, which
forthcoming.
can reduce someone's jail time even after conviction. I understand you don't speak for them, but you are very knowledgeable. You're a former U.S. attorney. Do you think he's provided substantial assistance to SDNY?
That's a good question, and it's really not for me to determine. It really isn't.
Do you hope he has?
I hope he has, certainly. I do hope he has, and I hope, if he hasn't yet, I hope he continues to do, because he does continue to assist the Southern District.
You said other investigations. Is that other authorities in New York?
Yes.
Would that be
Yes, it is.
potentially including the New York Attorney General?
Yes, that's true.
And also the DA in New York?
That's possible, but so far the Attorney General and the Southern District have asked us to help, and we are assisting.
You have been, as we pointed out, a front row seat to all this, and you're walking us through a lot of what looks damning for the president based on the evidence that Michael Cohen's providing. I also want to press you on one of the criticisms of him, which you witnessed in the hearing. Let me show what the Republicans are saying here now after the hearing. They're saying that Cohen testified he never defrauded a bank, that he didn't seek employment at the White House after Trump's election, that he didn't direct the commission of this online campaign, that he didn't have reportable contacts with foreign government entities. They say these are new lies by your client, Michael Cohen. Your response?
No, Michael, we stand by everything Michael said at in his testimony. He was truthful in his testimony, and we stand by everything that he said.
One of the most explosive legal claims he made would appear to contradict both Roger Stone and Donald Trump in public about collusion, which we all know is the heart of what Mueller began looking at. Take a look.
Mr. Trump knew from Roger Stone in advance about the WikiLeaks drop of emails. In July of 2016, days before the Democratic convention, I was in Mr. Trump's office when his secretary announced that Roger Stone was on the phone.
Did you ever talk to him about WikiLeaks? Because that seems to be what Mueller was. You never had a conversation.
No, I didn't. I never did.
Did you ever tell him or other people to get in touch with him?
Never did.
If your client told the truth last week there under oath, does that mean Donald Trump is lying about that? And if he told that lie to Mueller, what would that mean?
Well, my client told the truth last Wednesday when he testified that he heard Roger Stone on the phone, whose voice he recognized, talking to the President of the United States prior to his, of course, winning the election. And in that phone call, he told you exactly what he heard. And shortly thereafter, there was a dump of emails that was accomplished through WikiLeaks, which now we know WikiLeaks it happened to come through WikiLeaks through the Russians. You know, that is there's no doubt about that the Russians were involved in the hacking, and 13 of them have been indicted for it.
So that means Trump was lying, in your view?
You know, I can't say whether someone is lying or whether he forgot or whether he's confused or whatever, but he certainly is. It's not the same as what Mr. Cohen remembers from that day.
Finally, before I let you go, anything important that you see out of what's going to come this week in Cohen's private testimony?
I can't say for sure. I know that since it's private, I will not be able to talk about it, but it should be an interesting week.
What's the old saying? Those who tell don't know, and those who know don't tell. And you seem more in the latter category, Mr. Michael Monaco, but I appreciate your time tonight.
My pleasure. Nice chatting.
Appreciate it. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.